3, 2, 1. What's happening, guys? Hopefully that wasn't live with what Dustin just said, but we're here.
Hopefully it was.
If it was, then we're screwed, and what you just said is going to get you canceled. So we'll have to rewind and check it out and see. But we're here on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday afternoon. We've got a handful of things to talk about today. We've got Florida State versus Alabama having their kickoff time announced for them. Not going to be in the prime time slot. We're going to discuss that. We're going to jump into a Thomas Castellanos segment as well, where some of these latest rankings have been definitely not showing a whole ton of love to the projected starter for the Florida State Seminoles in this upcoming 2025 season. We will discuss that. And then we're going to jump into an ESPN analyst where he talked about Florida State last year, also was comparing DJU to Luka Doncic. Just wait and hold on and listen in for that part of the show. And then at the end, we have a handful of quick hitters before we wrap up the show. With me this afternoon is Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief at NoleGameday.com, and over to the other side, Austin Veazey. He's back with us. Gentlemen, how's y'all's week going so far?
Pretty depressing. Pretty depressing. You know, Celtics down 3-1. They've had a 14-plus point lead in every game, down 3-1. Then Jason Tatum tore his Achilles on Monday night, so that obviously hurts Boston, not only for the rest of the season, but well into next year, if not the entirety of the 2025-2026 season. So been a rough week for me. Hope it's been better for you guys.
Not really.
Mine has been phenomenal. Someone's got to have some positive vibes. I bring the positive vibes. Things are good. It's beautiful weather down here in the Tampa-St. Pete area. Schedule release is tonight. That's always fun. Get to start planning out the schedule and where we're going to be traveling to those games for the Bucks and the Commanders. So looking forward to that, as we always have some leaks coming on throughout the week. That's always exciting. And then heading overseas next week for myself, going over to Italy. So most likely we'll not have a show next week, but the week prior we most certainly will. And that Wednesday window for you guys. But having a pretty good week, good work week. But before we get started, as always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, hit that like button. Also, too, throw in some comments, throw in some topics. We'd love to bring them up here on the screen and discuss them for you guys. But let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned,
hang on.
Uh-oh.
Has Austin ever worn that hat on the stream before?
I got it for my birthday last month.
That thing's freaking dope.
Yeah, right? It's pretty cool.
The AV on there?
Yeah. Shout out my dad. This was a birthday gift. Pretty cool.
That's a good gift right there. That's good.
Yeah. I got matching socks too.
Whoa. Yeah, let's we'll stick with the hat.
Put your feet up. Put your feet up.
No.
They're not on my feet right now.
You got to pay for that. Nah. You got to make sure you're at least subscribed and liking the YouTube video before we show feet here on the screen. But a lot of people's feet are going to be really sweaty for Florida State versus Alabama because it's going to be a 3:30 kickoff in the newly renovated Doak Campbell Stadium, gentlemen, on ABC. Y'all's thoughts on this? Because I think all of us on here, we're projecting probably a nighttime kickoff. There are some big games, of course, going on in that week 1 window. But as all of us know, including people listening right here live and who watch the VOD afterward, 3:30 at that time of the year in a humid and very hot and sweaty part of Tallahassee, right there smack dab in Doak Campbell Stadium, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. Make sure you're, of course, having your beverages, but include some waters here and there as well. But 3:30 kickoff. Woo! What y'all's thoughts on this?
And Logan doesn't just mean beer when he's saying drink some water. So yeah, make sure to hydrate. That's going to be a hot one. But you look at the slate, Florida State, Alabama on ABC. We obviously saw Clemson and LSU get that 7 p.m. primetime slot, which, I think you look at those two teams, that's probably a little bit more of a proven game. I think both Tiger squads are going to be in the top 10 entering 2025, whereas Florida State, coming off the 2-10 year, Alabama, Nick Saban no longer there. They're going to be replacing their starting quarterbacks. That game may be a little bit more of an unknown than the one that you're going to have at night on August 30th. But it's going to be a hot one. Conditioning is going to play a major factor in this game. And, we thought Florida State could use the heat to their advantage in the past. And, you think back to that game against Boise State in 2019, you thought, they would be absolutely gassed. And it ended up being Florida State who was the one dealing with the heat late in that contest. So, we'll just have to see and, hope this football team comes out in very good condition.
Yeah, I think it could be entirely summed up just by saying Florida State was 2-10 last year. And I don't think any of us on this trio are projecting this to be that good of a game. Just given what came out of spring and the changes that both teams have made, it doesn't project to be that interesting of a game. I think most people would just rather care to watch LSU and Clemson. And that 3:30 kick is brutal for everybody involved, from the players to the fans to coaches to
me walking to the stadium.
To the janitors in the stadium. Everyone's going to be dying. And I was already leaning on probably not coming down, but yeah, there's no way I'm going down to be in that heat.
I think I saw a lot of tweets from the fan base saying, yeah, I think now after finding out that time, I'm going to probably just wait and go to another game because, yeah, the time is there. I think a lot of people, too, are watching and seeing what happens with Lee Corso and College Game Day. If there's a potential there, there's a big time Big Ten kickoff at noon. Let me just go through this college football schedule week 1 slate that is coming up upon us. I mean, I was looking at stuff yesterday and I was like, man, we're not like crazy close, but you can start feeling it a little bit. Also, too, they just wrapped up spring meetings or doing that today. I don't know, with the ACC. So Mike Norvell, Alford, Luke Laux also too there in attendance for that. But there are some big games. Of course, Florida State, Alabama. You've got LSU at Clemson. That's going to be kicking off at 7:30 on ABC. Your noon games, which I had just, who is the Big Ten noon game kickoff?
It's Texas, Ohio State.
Texas, Ohio State. So you get an SEC and Big Ten mix in there as well. But I think everybody's monitoring to see if Lee Corso comes home for his last College Game Day show.
I still think it's a possibility. I mean, we'll see how everything works out. I don't think it would be a surprise to, see them end up at that LSU Clemson game. But at the same time, all the history between Florida State and Lee Corso, and this being the beginning of his final season on College Game Day, it would make a lot of sense to go ahead and hit this Florida State-Alabama showdown.
I'm trying to think of some other things. I was seeing some updates on Doak Campbell Stadium. Seems like that's coming along nicely. I believe Alford was speaking on it and saying that things are still on schedule for Doak to be debut. I mean, there's no going back now. Florida State, this is going to be a very interesting and one that we'll be talking about a ton as we get closer to seeing what Alabama is going to be putting there at quarterback. They've got some big question marks as well. But as we get closer to this game, we'll have all kinds of scoop from Tuscaloosa as well, from hopefully our on SI Alabama site as well. So we'll have tons of coverage going into this game as we get closer. Jumping over, not only some question marks on the quarterback side for Alabama, but it seems like a lot of national outlets, at least for 247 Sports, have some major question marks on Florida State's projected starter with Thomas Castellanos. In a recent ACC QB rankings by Carter Bonds of 247 Sports, Castellanos was ranked at number 11. The ranking goes number 1, Cade Klubnik, number 2, Carson Beck, now Miami's quarterback, Kevin Jennings of SMU at number 3, Haynes King, as FSU fans know him very well, from Georgia Tech. He's at number 4, Miller Moss of Louisville at number 5. And then a few others that were named from Pittsburgh: Eli Holston, CJ Bailey from NC State, Kyron Drones from Virginia Tech, and then actually 2 quarterbacks that aren't even really projected to be starters yet. There's 2 names named before Thomas Castellanos here for Syracuse: Steve Angeli or Ricky Collins. And at 11 is Castellanos. Do we think that's way too low? I mean, it felt like in our production meeting, it wasn't much of a shocker to you guys, but interested to get y'all's take now that we're live in front of an audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting list, and I would imagine when someone is making something like this, they're probably just going off what Castellanos did in 2024, which obviously he was better as a passer, the 17 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, but really fell off the cliff as a runner in that offense that was instituted by Bill O'Brien in 2024 at BC. But you look back to what he did in 2023. The first quarterback in Boston College history to pass for 2,000 plus yards, rush for 1,000 plus yards in the same season. Florida State, they're hoping to get that version of Thomas Castellanos. And I think if they do, which, they're bringing him into an offense that does play to his skill sets rather than last year at Boston College, where, he was basically a square peg being forced into a round hole. We're expecting to see a resurgence from Thomas Castellanos in Tallahassee. And I know it was a little bit up and down in the spring, but obviously didn't have your entire core of offensive linemen or wide receivers, and dealt with some guys in and out in that running back room as well. So I think there's some confidence that at the end of the 2025 season, if you're to look at a list like this, Thomas Castellanos is going to be higher than 11. And I mean, even when I look at it now, I'm looking at some of these names. Louisville's Miller Moss, obviously a veteran who played at USC last season. Eli Holston, someone who's going into his redshirt sophomore season. Even Steve Angeli and Ricky Collins, who honestly don't have a lot of experience at the college level. It's kind of interesting that he's behind some of those guys when you look at what he has done. He proved it in 2023, did some good things with his arm in 2024, and now we'll see if Florida State's able to get the best version from his arm and from his legs in Tallahassee.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a couple spots low. Like I'd have a hard time thinking he's better than Kyron Drones, who I think is a really good player. But guys like CJ Bailey, and you're mentioning the Syracuse guys, that's where it starts to get a little questionable for me. So, maybe move him up a couple spots, but I don't think it's that disrespectful, all things considered. And the ACC's just got a bunch of these mid-tier quarterbacks, and you could really put them in any order. So it's not that big of a deal right now, and we'll just love to see how it starts playing in a few months.
247 put out another list. This is from Brad Crawford, and put out his top 50 quarterbacks going into the 2025 season, and Castellanos wasn't even in there, wasn't even named in that list as well. VZ shrugging his shoulders like, makes sense.
We shouldn't be surprised given how he played last year. And then, Dustin hit the nail on the head. He just wasn't in the right fit. Bill O'Brien did not want him to use his legs, but if all these guys are doing is looking at their stats, which, you're looking at 130 different quarterback stats, it makes sense to just be like, yeah, he was one of the 50 best quarterbacks last year.
But at the same time, this is something a guy like Tommy Castellanos can turn into motivation.
Yeah.
And, he seems like the guy who takes the smallest slight and then uses that to fuel his fire. And, that's why you see him play with so much emotion and passion on the football field. And, we've already seen him actually make a statement on Twitter referencing FSU and Alabama not getting that primetime slot. And he said, oh, bet, he wants to go out there and put on a show anyway and make sure that Florida State is in primetime later on during that 2025 season. So I think that's also maybe a positive from this. A guy like that can see that and just allow it to fuel his fire as we approach fall camp.
One thing too, I mean, play is of course very important for this upcoming season, and having a quarterback that can be elusive because, still this is a new offensive line that's coming in and didn't have a whole ton of time during the spring to build chemistry. So you need a playmaker there, and that's something that Thomas Castellanos is, but we've harped on it quite a bit. But I would say one of the things that stood out the most, if we're talking about Thomas Castellanos from the spring, was his leadership and the way that he's able to communicate with guys and also to hold accountability with them and be hands-on with his wide receivers, or if routes aren't ran well or drops are happening. I think that's going to play a big role in what Thomas Castellanos can do to improve this team from one of, if not it was the worst offense in college football. That's one thing that I think they were lacking in enormously, because you did have some younger talent in the quarterback room, but you just didn't have guys there with that, I don't think, the major confidence factor and the experience. And you just had a guy with experience, but just did not have that leadership capability and vocalness out of DJU, who was your starter to begin the season last year. So I think that's a big plus for what Thomas Castellanos brings. And I do think this is kind of poor rankings on him. And it's hard to do because it's all going to rely on what Gus Malzahn, and it should fit. We've seen some national outlets, they feel like this is the right fit for what they can do with Castellanos, and both sides can help one another just because of familiarity with Gus Malzahn. But to me, I think if Florida State starts up front with their blocking, of course, but it's going to come down to what Castellanos can do leadership wise, and then also too with what he can do with his legs, because he is one of the most exciting players to watch whenever he's able to get those legs going.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably, like you said, been the biggest positive about him transitioning to Florida State so far, because last year, whenever he exited Boston College before the conclusion of the 2024 season, I mean, there was a lot of noise surrounding that departure. He even had some veiled shots from Bill O'Brien at Tommy Castellanos, and to his credit, he just jumped into the mix since he arrived in Tallahassee, tried to take on that leadership role like you were talking about, Logan, and has already earned the respect from, countless players on the roster. We heard wide receivers talking about him. Luke Pettibon was talking about Castellanos and said shortly after he arrived at Tallahassee, Castellanos came by and helped him move into his new apartment here in Tallahassee. So, he's doing everything he can to get on the same page with these guys, build that chemistry, and have that mutual respect, which I think is massive for Florida State after that facet was missing a season ago.
Mm-hmm. There was another piece that we put out on NoleGameday.com covering an interview with ESPN's Matt Berry, who had some strong comments on FSU talking about this last season and then going into the upcoming year for Florida State. This is him talking about the 2-10 season. He said practically straight up, it better be better than 2-10. Better be better than that. And I've called a couple of Boston College games with Castellanos as their quarterback. And I think Florida State's getting a quarterback. You bring in Gus Malzahn, it's going to be a good marriage. It's going to be a marriage that has to work, or else there's going to be change in Tallahassee. He also commented on the big fall, the dramatic fall from 13-0 to 2-10, and said, and I just can't wrap my head around being that good the year before. Like, bad for Florida State with that tradition-rich program. I'm being serious here. Bad Florida State is 9-3, 8-4, right? You can go 2-10. You go 2-10, you've hit rock bottom. He also talked about the portal strategy under Mike Norvell and said what I believe Mike Norvell found out, and I think he's a really good offensive mind, is you can't live and die by the portal. Every year you need to build a program that is 70% recruit and develop, 25% plug in the holes. And by the way, Florida State's one of those programs. You can retain them, recruit and develop, and not worry about going to the portal, because it's Florida State. You want to stay. He also mentioned too DJU and the poor roster cohesion throughout the season last year. He said,
listen closely, VZ.
Yeah. Here we go. First of all, I'm not going to get into the DJU thing at this point. We're just piling on. To me, the DJU thing at Florida State was like the Mavericks trading Luka Doncic. It's like, in what world was that a good idea? So throwing some shots there at Mike Norvell and Florida State for taking DJU on from Oregon State. And quote here, he says, I think now Norvell has to understand that I need to bring in, there's a lot of high school talent in Florida. There's a lot of high school talent in Georgia. You need to build the foundation and have the portal guys plug the holes, because if you get a portal class that's ranked high, but they don't mesh and they don't sync, you're not going to win. It's just not going to happen. So I'll wrap it up there on that. First off, VZ, your thoughts there on comparing DJU to Florida State to Luka Doncic being traded to the LA Lakers.
That's crazy.
Come on, man.
Well, there's not Cooper Flagg waiting on the other side for Florida State football, unfortunately.
Herb Hand, baby.
And granted, us Mavericks fans didn't know that a week ago, And I would still trade Flag for Luka in a heartbeat. Don't get that twisted. It's, that's an outlandish statement to say the least. There was at least a world where you could talk yourself into the DJU thing working, even if I was against it. But there was a world where it could have worked. It just, last year's roster was not the right makeup for it. And they didn't build a great offense for him. He's not mobile enough to be in that system. Yes, was it a bad fit? Absolutely. But it wasn't as soon as it happened, everyone's like, what are they doing? There's people like, this might be able to work if they do it correctly. There was no one saying that about the Mavericks.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone for the Mavericks trade, except for Nico Harrison and Patrick Dumont
and Kendrick Perkins,
complete outrage over that. But yeah, I think whenever Florida State did land DJU, like you were saying, Austin, you could talk yourself into him bouncing back and having a good season for Florida State last year. Just didn't work out, and obviously the knee injury that DJ suffered during fall camp didn't help things. The massive regression from the offensive line was even worse, and you had receivers that couldn't catch passes. I mean, just all in all, a failure from Florida State's offense, and that's why they brought in Gus. That's why they brought in Tommy. They went to the transfer portal, brought in 2 experienced wide receivers. I guess 3 experienced wide receivers if you're including Gavin Blackwell into that mix. So we'll just have to see how it works out. But there is some optimism, obviously, within the coaching staff and the roster that there's going to be a little bit of a resurgence for Florida State in 2025 on that offensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. It has to be, or change will come. To me, I don't think it's hard. You can't, yes, you can, because they went 2-10. But Mike Norvell has, since day one with the transfer portal, he's been one of the best at it. He's found they're very early on in finding success before other schools, and now everybody's kind of caught on to everything. And now you're seeing Miami throw tons and tons and tons of money, definitely now, even at the high school rank, now grabbing the number 1 player in the country, an offensive lineman, probably throwing big bags there. Not probably, definitely did. But looking at what Minor has been able to do through the transfer portal, he's hit on almost every year except for that last season. And, now looking at it and being able to really find out things probably 3-4 games into the season of, well, this isn't working. And you can start to pick a few pieces around the roster that was hurting them. That's one thing that, I take away from this interview that, yes, of course, he should be criticized for what happened last year. But, Mike, there should be some a trust factor there that he still understands of who he needs to bring. And hopefully he learned from that situation last year. I don't know if there was, not doing enough work and analyzing some of those players that were coming in that would be a good fit for what you had. I think it was very much overlooked at, overlooked the amount of leadership and talent, starting power that you also had with the losses that were now, in the league, as guys like, Trey Benson, Jared Verse, Ornado Green, which we'll talk about here later in the show, like Jarian Jones, pivotal players that helped you make that run in the 2023 season. So I understand the national outlets of, telling, Mike what he needs to do, but he's found success with this prior, and you got to hope that can turn back to that after you lost that completely in 2024. I mean, you had a guy that, you brought in Keon Coleman, you had Johnny Wilson as well, but Malik Benson wasn't going to be your Keon Coleman. That's something that I think we realized, but, there was trust in Mike Norvell because he had success with these guys. I mean, look back at Trey Benson when he was at Oregon, didn't have a whole ton of playing time there. He had injury concerns as well, but that hit beyond belief. That was huge. That was one of Mike's biggest grabs to the transfer portal from a guy that, a lot of us on here and across, the beat weren't so high on that take, and ended up being your star running back for a couple seasons.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like maybe they got a little bit too comfortable, with bringing in guys and being confident that even though they didn't produce at their last school, we can flip them into a contributor or a starter here at Florida State. We saw that with some of the takes last season. Marvin Jones Jr. You can point at the 5 guys they brought in from Alabama, where Roy Dell was really the only one at the time who had done much at the college level. And then, I mean, some of the other takes as well. And then you look at the portal class that they're bringing in this season, far less guys who haven't earned experience or have proven themselves at the college level. It seemed like they went out, they looked for veterans, guys that have played a lot of football, already know how to contribute at the college level, rather than try and bringing in guys that they're trying to still develop into a new program. So that's the big difference for me between the last two portal cycles.
And I will say, I do want to nitpick his statement about the recruiting and the building the foundation. Norvell's been here, what, 6 years? You know, that foundation should have already been built, but he hasn't been able to develop these guys. You know, even when they've landed the 5 stars like Hakeem Williams and Julian Armello, they haven't been able to develop them whatsoever. So that's why they're having to go out and do this transfer portal thing all over again. It's been a bad cycle for a long time, and hopefully this new staff will make it a little bit better. But I think we all kind of have our doubts about it.
Got some doubts. May doubts. I mean, it wasn't a sparky spring, I would say.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah. I mean, like I had mentioned earlier, I mean, the biggest things we heard from, about Castellanos, your projected starter, is, that leadership part, which I think is very important. And, it's spring, still understand the system. Gus Malzahn trying to build chemistry, a lot of injuries happening as well. It was likely a more physical spring, but there's some certain, position groups that are going to have to see development in this fall camp, and a lot of chemistry still needs to be built within this offense. Definitely on this offensive line that didn't get to build that in the spring due to guys being limited or out completely during the spring. And I think that plays a massive factor for what we see moving forward, and definitely when we go into week 1, which will be against the Crimson Tide. But yeah, that's kind of where Florida State is at right now. Just talking about some of the national outlets and where they're ranking Castellanos. And like you said, though, Dustin, the guy that likes to put a chip on his shoulder and play that way would be a guy like Thomas Castellanos. So should see a pretty fired up, energized guy going into this fall camp. I want to jump through a couple of quick hitters to end off the show. Big one here. I was anxious about this for a couple of weeks, but now I can sleep at night. Tamir Hickman-Collins has found a new home. He's transferring to North Carolina. And over there, Bill Belichick and all of the fun drama that is going on up there with the Tar Heels.
Bill Belichick and his girl.
Heck yeah. But he's found a new home. I want to bring up here, too, Robert Saleh, now back with the 49ers as their defensive coordinator. He was in an interview with the media there talking about the season ahead, and he mentioned a former FSU star cornerback as being one of their top players, and it's Renardo Green. He said from a talent standpoint, Bosa is here. You've got obviously Fred Diamandre, or should I say Diamador, and Renardo. There's a lot of really good talent on this defense, so it's not nearly as what 17 was. Renardo Green was selected in the second round by the 49ers. He had a team high of 13 pass breakups for his rookie season, 41 tackles, an interception, and 1 forced fumble. That interception being a big one there.
He actually had 61 tackles.
61.
It's a big difference.
Well,
he had 41 solo tackles.
Oh.
That comes from NoleGameday.com. So
who wrote it? Call him out.
I don't know.
Does it have a name on the article? No, it wasn't me.
Making sure. I don't know who wrote it.
Tommy.
61 total, 41 solo. Is that what that is?
Correct.
That's the stats we need. But getting some love there from Renardo, baby. They're expecting a lot from him moving forward. We had We had combine and then NFL owners meetings, but got to hang out with Grant Cohn, who does a phenomenal job covering the 49ers, and talked very, very highly of Renardo Green. And it shows now with Robert Saleh going back to the 49ers how big of a pivotal role this young man is going to be over there in the Bay for the 49ers.
Yeah, fantastic rookie season for Renardo, and I mean, just hope he can continue building out there on the West Coast. And same thing with Tatum Bethune, who's also on that 49ers roster and showed some flashes last season. I mean, both of those guys, along with, I mean, you can go countless names from that 2024 draft class from Florida State, looking like they're going to be in the league for a long time.
Yeah, Renardo's going to have a great chance to step up because they lost Charvarius Ward in free agency to the Colts. So he's going to have a perfect opportunity to step in and arguably CB1 on that team. And that's a defense that didn't have the season they wanted last year due to a lot of injuries and other things, but they can bounce right back with Renardo out there.
Especially with Saleh coming back, because, I mean, they were pretty good during his tenure, and got to imagine they'll see a little bit of a resurgence on that side of the ball.
Another tidbit here on a former FSU defensive back, Asante Samuel Jr. got an update here from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN saying that he most recently visited with the New Orleans Saints. He had a neck surgery in April, but he does plan to meet with some more teams around July after his checkup there. So definitely a serious surgery there, but a lot of teams are going to be very highly interested in seeing how well he's recovering, because he is a talented young defensive back and is going to get a lot of attention if things are going well for that recovery there. So something to keep an eye on throughout the next couple of months.
There was a lot of smoke between him and the Vikings, like around draft time. Like there was some random, and I'm sure he probably made this up, that said he ran into Asante at like a club or something and he was wearing a Vikings hat. So that like sparked everything, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know. He'd be heading, it seems like, just had that visit with the Saints. So there is certainly some big interest with him. Another note here real quick, Anquan Bolden Jr. is transferring to play for Charlie Ward, who was just named the head coach of the Rattlers basketball program. He's going to be playing for Charlie Ward. What a cool story and moment there. Anquan Bolden being an absolute menace and beast at the wide receiver position. But he's going to go play some basketball for the former Heisman winner, Charlie Ward, and here the Spear alum. We always love having Charlie on here.
The funny thing is I told my mom this story and she got so confused. She's like, so Anquan Bolden's son plays basketball and he's going to be playing for Charlie Ward, who was coaching basketball, but yet he won a Heisman at football. She was very confused, but it was pretty funny.
That is
hilarious. I mean, pretty cool that Anquan Bolden Jr., is now going to get to come to Tallahassee. I know he's going to be playing at FAMU, but, going to be in the same city that his father started in back in the day. And, I'd be interested to find out how this connection ended up happening. I mean, obviously, you've got the Florida State connection, but Charlie Ward and Anquan Bolden didn't play at Florida State at the same time. So be cool to get a little bit more of an inside scoop into that. But, I mean, regardless, I mean, just really cool, to see Charlie Ward, Heisman winner at Florida State, has gone on to do what he did at Florida High and then now get this job at FAMU, and then to bring in Anquan Bolden Jr.'s son, who, as we know, one of the best wide receivers in not only Florida State history, but NFL history as well. Yeah. Just a cool story, man.
It also makes me wonder if they'll revive the FSU FAMU basketball series. I have some doubts, but it'd be pretty cool.
With Charlie there, I mean, you've basically got an olive branch you can extend, and I mean, it would make a lot of sense for both teams. I know, right, Austin, the ACC is cutting down the number of conference games, so I mean, Florida State, they're going to need some more opponents on their schedule.
Yeah, they just cut it down from 20 to 18, which I think 18 is the right number anyways, so that leaves room for 2 more non-conference games. Coach Laux has said that they want to schedule really tough. Like he said when he first got the job, he was trying to call up Auburn and Kentucky and all these other teams, but he also realized that they need some winnable games, and I think FAMU could be a fun one.
And then to wrap this up, we got to finish it off with some Jared Verse, because I think this is going to be such a fun road ahead in his career with entertainment. We got him. We've always got Jameis Winston to give us some stuff at the pro level, but Jared Verse is going to be so much fun to cover. And he was just most recently with Rich Eisen on his show in person there and talked about that 2024 NFC divisional round loss to the Eagles. If you guys don't remember, going up and leading into that game itself, Jared was talking about the environment, going up there and playing up there in Philly, and was chirping. I mean, it's Jared Verse. It's exactly what he did at the FSU or the collegiate level at Florida State, and he's certainly brought that up a little bit to the league. But in a quote here, this is from him talking about the loss. It says, "It crosses my mind about 3 times a day. I think about how if I did this or I did that, if Saquon's big run to the opposite of the field, if I didn't hesitate off the bat, I could have caught him. Or if he was on my side of the field, if I didn't overlap one gap more, just stayed in my gap, he wouldn't have had the second one." But Saquon Barkley obviously having a big time game there. And then Jared Verse trying to hawk him down there and grab that tackle before he reached the end zone. He said, "I could have been better, and it's just upsetting me every day. We could have won that one." I think it just showcases, how competitive that dude is and what kind of energy he also brings and is going to be bringing coming into this next season. But it doesn't shock me, though, that it's still hitting Jared Verse on losing that game, because if you think about it, the success that he had at Florida State, he wants to be a winner and he wants to take this thing to the next level. And he had a chance there with the Rams, but I still think they do have a strong chance there with Sean McVay and, what kind of talent they have moving forward. That defense, that front seven is really, really nice for the Rams.
And I think the best is still yet to come for Jared Verse. I mean, he really started to turn it on late in the regular season and especially in the playoffs. And, I think, the Philly fans, they knew about the chirping that Verse was doing into the game and, the kind of back and forth that was there between him and Saquon Barkley. You had Barkley kind of showboating him a little bit on that touchdown run where Verse was trying to chase him down. But, I mean, you just saw him continue to play. I think in that first half, I think he ended it with a sack or right around there at the end of that second quarter, got a sack. Got another one later on. Felt like even though he was in a hostile environment and especially going up, against fans like Philadelphia, who, are absolutely nuts. Let's just put it out there. He earned the respect of that fan base by the conclusion of that game.
Mm-hmm. He only had, I think, 4.5 sacks in the regular season last year, despite all those pressures and QB hits that he had. So he just cleans up some of those. He can very easily hit double-digit sacks next year.
Yeah. He's just a game changer at the edge position. And if you can increase your numbers there, of course, in the sacks department, that is going to create a massive, gigantic payday for Jared Verse. So won't be shocked if that comes to become a reality there for him. But anything else from you guys, gentlemen?
I'm surprised that we haven't talked about Jameis Winston. Derek Carr just retired from New Orleans. Jameis was beloved by the Saints fan base, and now New Orleans needs a starting quarterback. And, Jameis signed with the New York Giants in free agency, but they also brought in Russell Wilson. They drafted Jackson Dart from Ole Miss in the first round. I'm just starting to wonder with the pieces that are in play. New York's already got 2 quarterbacks. Could the Saints make a move and bring Jameis back?
I'd be surprised because they just drafted Tyler Shuck in the second round this year. I know. I'm just saying they clearly believe in him. They have Spencer Rattler, who they drafted the year before that, and then Jake Haener the year before that. So they've got a whole bunch of young quarterbacks that they've invested in. I'd be surprised.
They got 3 nobodies.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying from a front office perspective, I'd be surprised if they made a move where they've already invested 3 straight years of draft capital into quarterbacks.
Tyler Shuck, get me out of here.
Aaron Rodgers, if he doesn't come to Pittsburgh, then come on. We've been talking about this for years upon years and years and years. Let's just make it happen. Deep shots, DK Metcalf, Jameis Winston. He can do that. He can deliver that to you. Why not? Let's stop waiting around for this clown.
Did you know?
But
Tyler
if he
Shuck
gets named my quarterback, I won't call him a clown.
Did you guys know Tyler Shuck played 7 years in college?
Yeah, I think he's going to be like 26 when the season starts.
That is insane.
Yeah, we're starting to see a little bit of small shoving with the transfer portal and stuff. The COVID year, a lot of the guys staying longer in the college football level. But there are some teams now in the NFL that are leaning a little bit towards some older guys. It's a interesting wave and movement, but that's just because college football has changed immensely in the last couple of years.
Logan, this dude began his college career, I guess it was the same year as J-Trav. 2018 would have been J-Trav's first year, but
He started college when I was still in college, and
Yeah,
I
I was gonna
graduated
say,
6 years ago.
I graduated in 2017. Yeah.
His best season was 23 touchdowns to 6 picks. Jameis Winston, please get him to New Orleans.
If we're gonna pick one, let's just go ahead and go right there. Let's just go to Pittsburgh and make things a lot easier, a lot more fun. Imagine D-Lou getting them Steelers SEOs, getting those numbers. You ain't gonna get them with the Saints. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Seems like Saints aren't doing too bad for themselves from what you told me.
Yeah. But I will say though, I would feel better because Dennis Allen ain't there. So that would make me feel a lot better if he were to go there. Because I was about to say, do you want to regroup? You want to reunionize? Is that even a word? Get a reunion with Dennis Allen and Jameis Winston again?
I don't want that.
It sounds like a bad night on Tennessee Street. Just be vomiting. Makes me want to yak. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me and the guys here on Hear the Spear. I don't know yet. Maybe these two will do a show. It just depends if anything's going to be exciting and big enough for them to come on here. But doesn't seem like they're going to want to do one. Trust me, guys. If it was just me, I'd get you a show. But I'm going to be gone, and I'll be overseas. We will not be doing one while I'm over there.
Why?
But, why not? I'm going to be having a lot of wine over there, and
come sip some wine on the stream.
Yeah. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's a bad idea. The instant reaction to Florida State's loss to UF this last year was I don't want to do that again. There was no reason for me to get on a live stream in front of I don't know how many people, and
about 7.
Not really.
Oh no, it was more than that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was more than that. Our instant reactions are at least double, at least 14. But
now I'm curious if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, not a good. I don't want to know the numbers. I don't want to know how many people.
5.4 thousand.
Jesus Christ!
We were both drinking beers on the Miami recap stream.
Yeah, but this one is a little different. I wasn't. This one I was pretty 95% Ghani McGonies, but it allowed for me to really get out what I needed to say. So. Oh, goodness. Anyways, what we'll be doing, though, before that Alabama game is hydrating. And the best way to hydrate is have a nice cold beverage. And a good beer or two might have to. But we get to go sit in the press box, so that's nice.
Yeah, we'll bring the flask.
Oh, God, no. Don't say that. Then I'm going to be checked when I come in. But, all right, that's going to do it for this week's show. We'll see you in probably 2 weeks, just going off of these guys' facial expressions when talking about doing a show on their own next week. So
see you in July.
Gee, July. What are you talking about? We will see you guys soon. Unless something breaks, these guys have to come up on here. So we'll see what ends up happening. But thanks for watching. And before you leave, make sure you smack that like button down below. If you're new here, definitely feel free to hit the subscribe button too. It will notify you whenever we do have new videos or live shows going out for you. But until then, we will see you in a few weeks on Hear the Spear. Peace.